Let's start with where we are this morning on Iran. There was some breaking news. I just came back from Morning Joe, and there's some breaking news about Iranian ships, Iranians possibly firing on American ships and a UAE-marked tanker, and some confusion about what exactly happened. But I think we are in a moment where Donald Trump is stuck between war and peace, and he is trying to get out. But it's not clear that the Iranians are going to let him get out. And there is an assumption in the White House that economic desperation will make the Iranians come to the table and negotiate. And it's possible that that's the case. They are putting forward proposals that so far have been rejected. But there's also a possibility that I'm hearing from Iran experts, which is that economic desperation actually makes the Iranians lash out, which could lead to escalation. And I think what's interesting about what we saw today after Donald Trump had announced this Operation Freedom to try and get these tankers out of the Straits of Hormuz and liberate them so they can go back to their countries because they've been stuck there now for a couple of months. What we saw today was an indication of how quickly things can happen when you're in a war situation, which, whatever the president says, America's in a war situation, and you don't quite know which way it's going to go. You can have unintended consequences. And it's possible that the warship was not struck. It's possible that these were warning shots fired by the Iranians. But it's possible that this carries on and we do get somebody being struck, and then you get retaliation, and then you get escalation. Meanwhile, gas prices going up, the president's approval ratings going down. Where is Donald Trump and where's his head this Monday morning? Anthony, do you think?
I think he's waiting for something that crosses his field of vision that's instinctually a good idea. And I don't think he has it yet. So I don't think Trump is sitting there reading briefing books or he's doing anything but playing golf and working on arcs de Trump and ballrooms and thinking what other things he's going to end up naming. I don't think that. So one of the things that is going to happen here is somebody's going to get to him and is going to lay out a few good ideas. And remember with Donald Trump, you can't lay out the ideas by lecturing him or sounding smarter than him, or the minute you say to him, you know, I know better than you, let me explain this to you.
He doesn't like that.
Yeah, the conversation's over. So to me, I see 4 different frames here, and I'll just mention all 4 of them briefly, and please react.
This episode is brought to you by Whoop.
Whoop is one of my favorite all-time products. It's clear we're living through pretty stressful times right now. It's easy to underestimate how much that can affect our sleep and ability to stay focused day to day.
Yeah, avoiding burnout can feel like a full-time job in and of itself.
Whoop helps with the bit people miss. That shows what actually is going on beneath the surface, Caddy. It's a screenless wearable device that monitors your sleep, recovery, lifestyle, and stress.
Yeah, and this matters to me. It even looks very elegant.
Did you hear that, guys? Whoop is so stylish that even Caddy K will wear the Whoop.
It's the little gold clasp. I like that.
I'm telling you, I had no idea how much my old routine was impacting my health. But since using Whoop and making those small adjustments, I've already started to feel the difference. Better sleep, clearer thinking, even more energy.
Head to join.whoop.com/politics to get started with Whoop today.
1, he declares victory. He takes whatever deal is in front of him that's being offered. And there is some discussion that the enrichment numbers are going to go down to 3.5, 3.6%, which is below nuclear bomb activity in Iran. That's number 1. Obviously, Bibi Netanyahu will go crazy about that. So will the Hawks.
So would the UAE, by the way.
So would the UAE. 2, squeeze and hold the blockade. Okay, and that's sort of the Gulf of Tonkin situation. It's not the Suez, in my opinion. I was in London last week, had the opportunity to speak with a former retired admiral of the British Navy. He was drawing comparisons to the Suez Canal crisis. And just to remind everybody, Eisenhower stopped the French and stopped the British Navy from executing a plan on Nasser. He was in the middle of an election and he didn't want the fight with the Soviets over that issue in the Middle East, and that caused a capitulation of both France and Great Britain. And some people say that was the end of Great Britain as a superpower. And the question is this the end of the U.S. as a superpower? And again, this is not an American-centric view. This is me being as realistic as possible. It's not that, because the U.S. still has this incredible military capability and this very large control of the world, given its dollar hegemony status and the size of its economy. So it's definitely not that. That's second option, Caddy. Third option is you start striking again. You start bombing people and taking out some of the oil infrastructure and then see if you can get them back to the table after doing that. I don't think Trump actually wants to do that because his instincts are that this is such an unpopular war, Caddy. This is more unpopular than the Vietnam War at the peak of the Vietnam War. Last option is try possibly to make it a multilateral problem, where you're bringing in, as I've said earlier, China, India, Japan, and South Korea, and even possibly the EU. But to me, those are the options on the table. Trump doesn't like any of those options, Caddy. Okay. And so that's why we're sitting here muddling along.
I think those are the options. Basically, this will end through negotiation or through escalation. That is the way that conflicts end. Escalation, Donald Trump doesn't want, but I'm not ruling it off the table. I think there are still hawks, as you and I have said, in the administration and in the Pentagon who want this to continue. I was texting this morning with somebody who speaks to the president pretty regularly, who said, the tussle is actually between Vance and the Pentagon, but also between Vance and Rubio. Rubio is more in the UAE camp, which is we have to make sure we finish this and can walk away with something that actually looks like victory and is not just a kind of piece of paper that says the Iranians aren't going to do something which they may well end up going to do. He's more kind of long-termist about this, that you can't leave a regime in place that is, whatever we do now, going to then still develop a nuclear weapon or try to 10, 20 years down the line. So I think that is one option. The calling victory, that is clearly what Trump would like to do, to be able to frame this as a victory. But that's where I think the events of this morning make it more complicated. If he's going to carry on this Operation Freedom, shipping experts are already telling every reporter who will call them, we are not going to go through just because the president tells us it's okay to go through. We're not going to go through the straits because our ships are too expensive. They're worth too much money for us. We need a naval escort. And the president doesn't want to do a naval escort. His initial thinking was, we're going to announce a naval escort. And then he watered it down. And now it's this sort of central command idea of a call center, basically, where you can call in and find out where the best lane is. But I think there is a risk with that this either just fizzles out, this big announcement that he had over the weekend of a kind of, we're going to have this Operation Freedom, or if it carries on, there is a serious risk of some kind of escalation. The multilateral thing, you've been saying for a while, they need to get the Chinese on board. It's possible that they bring the Chinese on board. It's also possible that the Chinese are sitting back because they still have some reserves at the moment. They've been able to weather this better than some people thought they would at the beginning. They have reserves for longer. So do the Chinese get involved in the way that the president does? And if the Chinese do get involved in the long term, is that actually great for America anyway? I mean, I think you're right about Suez. This is not Suez. And the difference with Suez is that the British Empire was basically replaced by the American Empire. It was the Americans saying, don't do this because we're the new kid in town. The Chinese have not yet come along and said, okay, leave this one to us. This is over the American century. We've got this now. You've proven yourselves to be unreliable allies, unreliable trading partners, unreliable when it comes to stability. So we're going to take your position. I'm not hearing that from the Chinese yet. So Donald Trump is in this position that he doesn't want to be in, and his approval ratings, poll after poll, and yeah, you always have to be careful of one approval rating, but there is not an approval rating out there at the moment that shows that his approval rating is getting any better. This is a difficult time for him, except maybe he doesn't care because actually he's not going to be on the ticket. His name is not on the ballot. So
yeah, well, I've stipulated that.
Yeah, we've said that.
We should get into the Vance Rubio thing. He's destroying Vance, and soon he'll turn his gun sights onto Rubio. But I'm back to the role-playing caddy. I'm sorry.
Go on.
Couldn't resist myself. Okay.
Monday morning, limbering up.
I've been thinking about this over the weekend, and you're the president.
Oh, great. I'm right there. Okay.
I'm going to make my pitch. Okay, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is how the president gets stuff. This is like a 45-second pitch. I got to talk quickly because I know you don't have a lot of attention.
That's quite long. Can you not make it 15 seconds?
All right, we're going to try, though, okay?
Do we have any cartoons or pictures?
Remember what I said. If you're going to show the president pictures, it's got to be pictures of himself, and it has to be frontally. You can't show the president from the side, because I have been with him where he complains he looks too fat. Well, look at me. From this angle, no, looks too fat. But for some reason, he likes the way he looks straight on.
He's been putting pictures of himself on Truth Social, floating in the new reflecting pool in a swimming trunks. So he's clearly feeling good about how he looks at the moment.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, this is part of the mania.
Nothing like AI to get you down a few pounds.
Guy's got a little bit of mania going, but here's the pitch, okay?
Okay.
You got to start out with the praise. So no other president in the last 40 years would have ordered this strike. Obama wouldn't, Biden wouldn't, you did. You took out most of their hardware.
They were weak. I'm strong.
Yeah, they were weak. You're a military genius. Okay.
Kind of liking this role.
But Mr. President, listen to me. We can't leave it here because you don't want the headline to be Trump bombed Iran and it didn't work. Okay. And now here comes the story. All right. Because you got to tell them a story, Caddy. Can't just be pedantic. So you got to tell them about the tanker war in 1987 through 1988. Do you remember the tanker war, Caddy?
I remember the tanker war.
So what basically happened quickly in the tanker war is that we started reflagging tankers. And when the Iranians went to strike those tankers, we started decimating and annihilating their military and their navy to the point where the original Khomeini, he surrendered. And he ended the war, which also contemporaneously ended the Iran-Iraq war. They called it drinking from a poison chalice, okay? So staying in the region got the deal. And so...
You've already lost my attention. This has gone on for too long and it's been too historical. Sorry, Mr. Advisor. I need you to say a little bit more about me.
You probably are right about that. Okay, so let's cut right to the chase. Okay, Mr. President, I want you to leave because he likes the word holes. I want you to leave the holes in the Gulf. Okay, this is like one of their buzzwords in the Navy, like war fighters. You know, instead of saying ships, they like the word holes. Okay, so holes in the Gulf. Okay, and I want there to be forces adjacent to the enrichment sites, which is a polite way of saying I want to put troops in. Because, Mr. President, you like toys, and I know you like this idea because they're already there. The Marine Expeditionary Force is there. Let's put 100,000 troops in the area, and let's own the choke point for the next 15 years. And now everybody, China, Japan, Korea, India, everybody has to call you to get their oil. And you say what, Caddy?
No boots on the ground.
Tell me why.
Because I don't want any more shooting. I don't want any more fighting. I'm done. I want to talk about the arc to Trump. I want to talk about the ballroom. I'm bored of Iran. Never want to hear you say the word again. And I want to claim victory, whatever. And I don't want troops there forever because then you know what the newspapers will say? The lamestream media is going to say that this is a forever war. And I campaigned on not having a forever war.
You're going back to option one.
I'm going back to option one. He declares victory somehow.
And how does he handle Netanyahu, his lone ally now?
If he was serious about wanting to use force again, every time the Iranians present him, how many deadlines has he pushed back now? 5 times he's pushed back deadlines. He's had multiple attempts when you'd think he would have given up at peace negotiations. He's trying this because he wants to choke them economically. He can just about handle them choking them economically, but I think he really doesn't want to escalate with boots on the ground. I may be wrong. Look, I think we're in this position where he's weighing this up. And if there is some kind of an incident in the Gulf because of this blockade against a blockade, then I think he may be forced into taking some sort of action. If American warships are fired on, and God forbid, if any American sailors were hurt, even worse, then I think he has no choice but to escalate. Then he'll have to do it. But he's going to try everything he can not to in the meantime. And he wants out of there.
This episode is brought to you by NordVPN. You know, Caddy, Alistair Campbell taught me how to use NordVPN on a train from Glasgow to London. I love this product. I want to be connected as soon as I sit down, but speed can come at a cost to security. Most of the time, cyber attacks are not Hollywood style. They're disguised as a fake link, a phishing email, or a public network that looks normal, and NordVPN protects you from all of that.
I didn't have my NordVPN switched on recently, and I was the subject of a hacking attack. I got an email that I thought was legitimate. I opened it, and now I'm very careful about having my NordVPN switched on. Using NordVPN helps protect my privacy and sensitive data, especially as we're often working on the move or using public Wi-Fis.
With Threat Protection Pro, malicious websites, ads and trackers, and phishing attempts are all blocked before they even reach us.
To get the best discount on your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/tripus. You'll get 4 extra months free on the 2-year plan, plus a 30-day money-back guarantee. The link's in the episode description.
Let's go to that decision tree. I had that as the number one choice, if you remember, right? So you have a 14-point plan from Iran. I think these are non-negotiable, Caddy, but tell me if you disagree. The 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium has to leave Iranian soil. Maybe Trump will even accept Putin having it. Okay, it could be physically removed to Russia. The strait reopens before the sanctions lift, not simultaneously. We don't trust you guys, so we've got to keep the sanctions on. And there's a 20-year nuclear freeze, not 15. So you take all 14 of those points, the 3 that I just mentioned, I believe that the Iranians would take. Okay, it gives Iran what they actually need. The end of the war, lifts the blockade. It unfreezes some assets. Okay, and it drops the demand, at least for now, to dismantle the nuclear infrastructure. So again, this is the worst version of the JCPOA. And said differently, please answer the following question. Had the Obama deal just stayed in place, would that have been better for the United States and better for the world economy and better for all parties there too?
Okay, so it wouldn't have cost $125 billion in fighting, which the Secretary of Defense told Congress that it cost at the end of last week. So you'd have saved that money. It wouldn't have depleted America's stock of munitions, which has been seriously depleted. You wouldn't have had American army bases in the region hit. And apparently the reporting is coming out at the moment that they've been much worse hit than we were led to believe. So you wouldn't have had that. You obviously wouldn't have lost the lives of the Americans who have been involved in this. And we don't know how many injured because the Pentagon won't tell us how many injured. You wouldn't have had the losses of life that you've had in Iran. You wouldn't have had a school being hit and children being killed in those strikes. You wouldn't have had the loss of American prestige around the world. You wouldn't have increased the rift between the Americans and the Europeans, which was bad and has now got a lot worse. And you would have been in the same position where Iran was not producing nuclear material. And actually, under the JCPOA, when it was still operating, the inspectors were going in regularly and saying, no, the Iranians were not in violation. They sped up their uranium production after America pulled out of the JCPOA. So I don't know which of those sounds like it would have been worse than the situation we're in now. The counter argument that I have heard from Republicans on the Hill who are Trump aligned is, well, we've decimated their missile supplies. So we've made it harder for them to attack their neighbors. They weren't really attacking their neighbors at that point anyway. And they've still got half of their missile supply, according to intelligence sources, which they're keeping underground. So we haven't decimated their missile supply, but we've set them back economically. We may have increased the clout of the hardliners in the regime and given the regime an extended lease of life. So you tell me, Anthony, is there anything that I've just ticked off that sounds to you like it would have been worse?
There's nothing that you said, but I guess my follow-up question, Caddy, is how does he get away with this? Meaning, how does the Fox News echo chamber and still all of these people beating the drum for him, how do they look at you with a straight face and say, yeah, well, this is better than the Obama deal? So in other words, we hate Obama, everything Obama stands for, so that's fine. He's out. We have the great white supremacists in, and so anything he says is okay. How does he get away with it, Gaddy?
Trump, who has now taken to posting Truth Social photographs from the Obama era, which don't even say Barack Hussein Obama, now just say Hussein Obama, photographs of his bits of Washington under his time. So I don't think he does get away with it in the sense that there's going to be a massive rejection of this, it looks like, in the midterm elections and when voters go to the polls. The reason voters are pissed off with this, I think they would tolerate what's happening in the Gulf if they felt that the president had been laser focused on the job description that they gave him when they voted for him. And the job description he was given was very clear from the American public: bring down prices, make our economic situation better, and then you can do your other stuff. But the problem he's getting is that he's not focused on the job description he was given. So I was talking to a Republican strategist this morning who said this is going to be like the 2006 midterms were, George W. Bush's second term. He's caught up in the Middle East. He's not doing enough to focus on what people want at home, and you get a change election in 2008 and you get something very different. I think that's where we are. We've got a president who is caught up in the Middle East, who is caught up in his own vanity projects, and we can run through them because, as I've been struck, Tony Pastor at Goalhanger sent us both a story from the FT about the number of things Trump is trying to name in his honor, and I suddenly looked at it. The New York Times, The Atlantic, Politico have all done similar stories in the last week because we're getting to critical mass moment where the president's attempts to focus on his legacy in physical buildings is clashing up against what voters wanted from him. So they're not going to forgive him for going to Iran because he's not dealing with prices. They're not going to really forgive him for talking about the ballroom because he's not dealing with prices. If he was dealing with prices, if people's pocketbooks were going well, I think he could get away with a lot of this other stuff.
Is Obama a popular figure among the Democrats right now?
Yeah, I think he is a popular. He's well, polls suggest amongst Democrats he's routinely the most popular Democrat.
Okay, so why aren't the Democrats saying the following then? That, Obama may have gotten a flawed deal, but he did freeze the program. Trump is being offered a worse deal, and it doesn't even pretend to freeze the program. So why aren't they comparing and contrasting Obama's legacy and the ideas behind what he was doing to what Trump just did?
So I think you will hear that when Trump comes up with a deal. But at the moment, the deal situation, the 14-point plan being proposed by the Iranian, the 10-point plan being proposed by the Americans, the different plans is very confusing for people to understand. If you asked most Americans, where are we in the war? They wouldn't really know, are we in a war? Are we not in a war? Is there a peace plan on the table? What does that peace plan involve? Are we bombing? Is the Straits of Hormuz open? Is it not open? The situation is sufficiently murky that I think if I was a Democratic strategist at this point, I would say leave this to the administration. Literally, oil prices are going up. His approval ratings are going down. Let them swim in this one. And then if a deal is announced and it's on the front pages of the paper and it's clear what the deal is, at that point, you can point out the difference between the president's deal and the president's deal, 44's deal and 47's deal.
Would the Republicans had impeached Barack Obama for a deal like the one that Trump is going to get?
No, because I don't think the one that Trump is going to get is going to be terribly different from the one that Obama got. So I don't think they'd have impeached him for it.
Okay, but I just think they would be raising holy hell. Trump said it was the worst deal ever.
Trump talks in superlatives. People discount that.
There are two numbers that I think people should focus on. And one of them is $3.50. And the other one is $5. And let me tell you what those two numbers are. Those are the potential gas prices coming into the summer. So if you get a deal by Memorial Day, gas probably goes back under $3.50. Okay, maybe takes a little while, but Trump ended the war will be the narrative that runs through November in an effort to try to help the Republicans hold the House. If you get no deal, okay, and gas goes to $5 and stays there, I think you have a recession risk. And I think that cable news is not going to react too friendly to Trump going into November. And you could have that 30 seats that you and I always talk about being in play could shift to the Democrats. So, he doesn't need a perfect deal, but he needs a deal that he can sell and call perfect because that's his personality. Okay. And so those are the things that I think are happening. And how long do you think the U.S. Navy, because that was another good trade that they made over the weekend. They said the U.S. Navy is going to escort the ships. It influenced oil prices. And of course, there were traders right there take advantage of the announcements that were coming again on the Sunday leading into the market activity on Monday. But how long do you think that the U.S. Navy is going to be, quote unquote, escorting ships through the Strait?
I don't think the US Navy is going to be escorting ships through the Strait. I think they're going to be telling ships which lanes are safe. But I don't think you're going to be seeing actual Navy ships doing an escort, which is what it would take to get the ships through. That's something, especially after this morning, where even if it was just warning shots that were fired, they're going to be very wary about that. Trump wanted that, but he seems to have been talked down from doing it. But I think this goes on beyond Memorial Day, which is the end of this month, 3 or 4 weeks' time. I think we could still be in this kind of Cold War standoff.